best advice is plan as much as you can, have backup time, backup things to do when your time is, in my experience, taken. It feels stolen when you have to go do something like the DMV. Like I wasn't planning on that, and now I have to fucking do that, and I have to pay you money for inconveniencing me. Like that's how you feel, and the rage comes.
Yep.
And again, not mad at the
The
DMV
rage
people. They're
comes.
working a hard job. Hi everyone, welcome to Behind the Booth. I'm Jade. With me as always is my award-winning producer, Heather.
And on this channel, we talk about wild stories from Comic-Con vendors because Jade is a Comic-Con vendor. She made her own product and she sells it all over the country at all different kinds of conventions and craft shows and all kinds of stuff. So she's all over the place. But a big topic we're talking about today, and it's like kind of a basic topic because it's something that we all, like pretty much everybody, needs to think about, is time management. Because especially when you're going to all these different events and everything, you're going to need to figure out how to do things quickly and efficiently. And if you don't, you're going to waste a lot of time, well, of course, a lot of time, but a lot of money, and you're going to probably stress yourself out. So let's figure out like how to make time work for you. So take it away, Jade.
That was a great way to explain that, how to make
Right?
time work for you. You hear people say like, I don't have enough time, or I wish there were more hours in the day, and blah, blah, blah. And there's a quote that somebody had said something about you have the same 24 hours that Beyonce has. Like, you have to
Yeah.
work with the time that you have. I will say this, I am not a time management expert. I do not teach courses. I don't write books on them. However, I am a student. I have read probably 25 books on time management. I have been to seminars, and I have worked with coaches on how to be better with those types of things. And so I'm just going to pull from some resources that I use and things that I do personally. Now, before I get started on a lot of this is what you should do, this is how you should do it, I want to be very clear that I am childless. So I don't have that additional pressure and requirement of my time that children need and deserve. I am married, but my husband does also work full time. So I have time within my day that does not directly result with somebody who needs my attention constantly. Um, and that I am a business owner and I own my own business. I do not work another job that requires my time there as well. So given that bit of information on my end, I can still talk about how I work through my things and how I've been educated, even if those are factors for your life. Now we have the life that we have, and there's nothing wrong with having a lot going on with your life. I have friends that have 4 kids. I have friends that have 2 kids. I have friends that have no kids. And they all work with the same constraints within just basic daily lives, like probably having to do the dishes. You probably have to cook. You probably have to go to the DMV. I had to go to the DMV yesterday out of nowhere and had to reschedule my whole fucking day because the DMV is not something that's predictable. So we'll talk about these types of things as well. Um, but the primary thing I do every day when I start, some people say like, "Oh, I get up at 5 a.m. and I do yoga and I meditate and I contemplate the universe." And I don't have time for that shit. I do not do those things. I do self-care in a very different way. But that is not how I start my day. I start my day every day with a cup of coffee and puppy snuggles and sitting with my husband, and we'll watch something short just to get the day started because I need to remember what I'm working so hard for. I'm working hard for my family. And that's a great way to reinforce for me that I have that. And I get to wake up in a calm manner versus a fuck, I've got an 8 a.m. meeting and I have to, pitch my toy to this person and I have to work with my podcast producer and have to work through this book I'm writing. Like
I know,
there's
I'm
a
such a
lot
pain
that
in
can
the
go on in
ass.
your day that throws you off. Mhm. So starting with something that makes you happy is the primary piece of advice that I've always gotten kind of across the board. Brian Tracy is somebody who's very famous for writing about time management and business success and mindset and things like that. His books are very easy reads if you ever feel like picking one up. One that he's very famous for is called Eat That Frog, which sounds gross and it's supposed to. And he basically says that there's different ways to tackle problems that come up in your day. That is just the fact of life, like the DMV, for example. He would call that the ugly frog, the ugliest, largest frog of your day, you should start with instead of putting it off. Where we lose time, in his opinion, comes from procrastination. that we'll spend time doing other tasks and things that are not as important as the thing that we really need to do. So the first thing you need to do in your day is the most difficult, ugly thing. And his theory on that is once you do that, the rest of your day will be easier. You won't procrastinate, you won't put things off, and you won't have dread and additional stress in your life if you put off the DMV to the next day. Be like, oh, well, I got to go tomorrow. So um, contacted Heather, my podcast producer, and said, "Hey, I've got this coming up. I don't have a great way to work around it. Can we reschedule?" And I apologized because it was on my end. It was something that happened unexpectedly, and she's like, "Yeah, sure." So first thing after puppy cuddles and coffee, I immediately went to the DMV. Now we all know the DMV tends to be what we feel like is a huge waste of time, because it is. And I was there. What was it? 2 hours, I think, waiting
Probably, yeah.
on my number to be called. And I went in the morning in the middle of the week, which was arguably the best time to go. And the way I know that is I just looked it up on Google. Google has analytics that show you the busiest times and the less busy times of businesses. And the DMV was one of those. So I went at the time that it is supposed to be the least busy. Um, since Heather and I are working on writing a book for this particular podcasting series, I was able to work on that book for 2 hours while I waited on the DMV. When I started getting tired of writing, which absolutely, absolutely is the thing, I started reading one of my books on how to self-publish. These are all things I have to do regardless. But I was able to take this like tote bag that I have that I just bought that I'm really in love with. It was my bonus for this year. And I bonused myself $75. So, you got to pay yourself. And that was
Nice.
my Christmas bonus. And I just used it a little early because, October's fine. And I took these things with me and worked on them until I got burnt out on one and then switched back and forth. So I didn't quite lose 2 hours. I just had to be in an unhappy place for 2 hours to get things done. Um, Generally speaking, I plan months ahead of time, especially because we have so many shows. We have community events and shows and farmers markets, and then I have podcast recordings. I have to write books. I have to do speaking engagements. I have additional trainings I've signed up for. I just signed up for a TEDx speaking event 2 weeks from now that I was like, I have the time available. I need to go. And so there's all this work I have to do. Plus, I still have to make product and I still have to work on my social media and I still have to build my website. I mean, you talk about all these things that pile up. And anytime that we can get those things done when we would have felt like we lost time that we weren't able to, could I worked on my website at the DMV? No, there's no internet. And I could bring my laptop, but I might get mugged. You know what I mean? Like it's not something I would plan on doing at the DMV. But the other thing that I have to do, which is write the book, I had a piece of paper so I could work on the outline, work on what I'm doing there, and I could at least get the structure done. So that's one less thing I have to do that I could have been at my home, with a dog cuddle up my ass working on. But since I had to be pulled out of my home unexpectedly, I was able to get something done, something that is progressive. So once the DMV was out of the way, I was able to come home and eat because remember to feed yourself. And then I was able to knock out a few other things. I got some photos taken for product that I need to put out. I have my laser cutting machine cutting products that I need to make for my next show. So a lot of it comes down to what they call pre-planning. So I know in a normal day, what would be happening is like today, I had coffee and some puppy cuddles. It was a little bit shorter because I was running a little bit late. I started my machine downstairs for cutting. That's going to take about 6 hours. So I could be ready here to do the podcast. I had an unexpected phone call that I had to take, let my producer know, hey, this happened. She's like, all right, well, get here when you can. And we're staying on a little bit later to make sure that that gets done. Now, gratefully, in our time frame, we allow a buffer at the beginning and the end. That's something that
Yep.
you're going to hear from a lot of people. Do not schedule back to back if you can possibly help it. So let's say you're pitching to somebody that you want to be speaker at, and then right after that meeting, you've scheduled another one because you're home and you're not in Sacramento this weekend to talk to somebody like Hasbro about holding your toy. Give yourself at the bare minimum 15 minutes.
Hmm.
Most of us give ourselves a half an hour to 45 minutes in between because if something goes long, you need to be able to have that time and not, especially when you're selling, not have that person feel like they're getting pushed out the door.
Yeah.
It's just like when you ask for something. You don't go to your neighbor's house and be like, "Hey, do you have any sugar?" Be like, "Hurry the fuck up, I need it now." Like they're gonna be like, "Sorry, bitch, I'm out of sugar. You should have planned." You have to be like, "Do you have sugar? I'll wait. Thank you."
Yeah.
Well, don't whine at them. I mean, I whine at my neighbors, but you don't have to. I just found that it works better for me. So, you need to plan those buffers out. Now, here's the best thing about it though. When I wasn't here for the call this morning with Heather, she was able to get other things done when we should have been podcasting that she
Mhm.
was going to do afterwards. That's kind of how you have to shift your time around within the structure, within the structure of your planning. Um, I say this all the time, but write it down, put it in your calendar, like take pictures on your phone. We have so much going on in our brains all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how some people do it. Like, I
Yeah.
do it and I don't know how it happens. Like, I don't know how I keep track of everything. And so the less we have to do in storing memory, like think of it like a computer, less you have to have running in the background, the more you can really focus. By the way, multitasking is not a thing. People
No,
say it's a
not
thing.
true
It's so not a
multitasking. No.
fucking thing.
No.
No. My mom was a Marine. And she believed she would always say, like, learn to multitask. You need to multitask. And I was like, I can't do it. I don't do it well, so I'm not going to do it. So I give 100% of my attention on each thing as I do it. That is another thing that is taught in a lot of time management classes is that they'll say things like, if you have multiple things to do, like answer emails, get on Zoom meetings, read a fax, whatever it happens to be. I don't even know if they fax anymore, but this is an older book that I was reading. By the way, I read old and new information. I don't segregate that out unless it's something like how to use DOS. Like no one uses fucking DOS anymore, so I'm not going to read that book. But like general concepts like time management, there's nothing wrong reading older books versus new. Um, but they'll say do one task at a time. Take 15 minutes, answer all your emails, and then don't look at your emails again until 4 o'clock that day. Heather is so good about boundaries. She is so good about not reading text messages just throughout her day, or she's with her kids. She's not on her computer. She's not on her phone. Like she's doing and focusing what she needs to do. I know that if I text her later in the evening, because we have different hours, like she's a morning person, I am so fucking not. I know that I'll probably get a response between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And unless it's on fire and I have to talk to her, I don't call her. I just send her a message and then she'll get back to me. I don't wake up till 10. Sorry, guys. That doesn't happen for me because I go to bed at 2 a.m. So when I wake up, I'll see, oh, I have messages from Heather. She got back to me on blah, blah, blah. And I know
Mhm.
I'll hear back from her within 24 hours because she is good like that. And I work with people that I can trust and that I know will work within what I need as well.
Yeah.
That's dynamic, bitches. And if you want to know more about that, listen to one of our other podcasts where we talk about it. So, planning out as much structure as you can, having those boundaries and focusing on one thing at a time.
Mhm.
That's what keeps you what they would call more like efficient rather than, um,
Busy.
you're just staying busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a huge difference between productivity and just being busy.
Yep.
And think of like bees, for example. This is a great analogy that I just came up with in my brain. So, bees are busy. The busy bee. They're out there kind of floating around and checking out the flowers and like, oh, there's some flowers. So let's have a cuddle session. Have you ever seen bees cuddle in flowers? It's the cutest picture ever. Google it. It's
Mhm.
adorable. But they just kind of like do their thing in general. Ants are efficient. Ants are like, we have this direction. We're doing this. We're all working together. I'm going to carry my little piece of cheese or whatever I found on the floor. I'm going to carry it back. And there's no like they have one ant they send out there to go do the thing, and then he comes back and tells all the other ants. Like that is being efficient, and ants will work less time because they're doing it in a more organized manner than versus
Mhm.
like the little froggy bee. Now, do I love bees? Yes, and we need to rescue them. We need to give them plants, and we need to pollinate because we're like a lot of shit's dying right now, so we need to do that. I have nothing against bees. I think they're adorable, and I like when they cuddle. Um, but you need to think of yourself as being efficient over busy. And
Yeah.
one thing that we're seeing in our culture, which I'm really excited about, is what is it called? The 4 day work week or the 4.5 day
Mhm.
work week,
Yeah.
where you just have tasks to complete and you completed your tasks, you go home and you're paid for what those tasks were worth.
Yeah.
Or pay, or what is it? Act your wage, right?
Yeah.
Instead of keeping employees from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then, what they get done, they get done. If people get done early, they'll just keep doing miscellaneous boring things, or they'll put things off, or they'll procrastinate because they have to be there a certain time. If you come into work and you're like, okay, you need to be here at 8 or whatever the requirement is, but once you're done with your tasks, you can leave. And as long as they hit, the expectation, right? Not just like, fuck it, throw in the bin and go. Like, I would much rather focus for 4 hours and go home than hang out for 8.
Yep.
And that's something that's just becoming more and more part of our culture, especially with remote work. So when you're doing that, think about your time being efficient. If I can
Mhm.
get my lasers cut, my products ready to go, or at least starting them in the drying process, I can hang out and watch some TV because I'm done for the day.
Yeah.
And I can have some of that self-care we're always talking about if I get done ahead of time. And it's not work yourself to death. Have I done overnights? Absolutely. Have I had shit go wrong and work literally all the way until my flight takes off the next morning? Yeah, I've fucking done that. I am not perfect and I've made mistakes with my time management. It definitely happens. And things that are within your control and out of your control will totally happen. So, my best advice is plan as much as you can, have backup time, backup things to do when your time is, in my experience, taken. It feels stolen when you have to go do something like the DMV. Like I wasn't planning on that, and now I have to fucking do that, and I have to pay you money for inconveniencing me. Like that's how you feel, and the rage comes.
Yep.
And again, not mad at the
The
DMV
rage
people. They're
comes.
working a hard job. Not mad at you.
Yeah.
Just mad at the system. But being able to make up the time if you can, within the efficiency, and then getting it on a calendar, getting it somewhere where you can see it and not have to memorize it, not have to remember it. And fucking use your calendar, by the way. Like, don't just put it in there. I have so many people that I see, other artists, they're like, yeah, I put it in there, but I forgot until the day. I'm like, did you set an alarm or anything? Did you not look at it that week? Like, no, well, I was doing this and I was doing, I'm like, well, you got to look at it or else it's not going to work for you. You have to pay
Yeah.
some attention, like try a little bit.
Well, and
But
you have
I
to figure
mean,
out a system that works for you. Like some people love to have the paper schedules that they write everything down by hand. Some people love to have it on their computer. I have a combination of the both. But like she said, writing things down, getting them out of your brain, it takes away, because if you're like, "Oh, I'll remember that." Then your brain's just going the entire time going, "Okay, I'll remember that. I'll remember that. I'll remember that." And that's taking up brain space, and then you're going to get exhausted really easily.
just did
And you
that.
won't know
We
why,
just
just
did that.
because yeah. And so like
We
it's
So we're like, what was it supposed to be? We spent 10 minutes trying to remember what it was.
because we didn't write it down. Because we didn't write it down because once so what I do is I have a combination. I have my computer or sorry, my calendar on my computer and then I also have like a list every day that I write down of the things that I need to do and then I figure out
Yep.
what order to do that in, but I write them down as I think of them instead of being like, okay, so tomorrow morning I need to remember to do these things. No, just write them down and then you'll get to it. But when you're doing this, when you have a booth, when you have a product or whatever that you're doing, there's going to be a million different things that you need to do. Right? Are you trying to get a patent? Are you applying to a bunch of different shows? Are you wanting to start a podcast or write a book? There's a lot of things that you're going to want to do for this business. And it's really hard to do it all if you have to keep it all in your head and or not think of a system. But everybody is completely different. And so like you may do it like I do. You may want that or you may want that beautiful, like, I always wanted to be a planner person, like with like those gorgeous planners and they have like everything written down all beautiful. But I get to it, I use it for a week, and then I'm like, I can't do this anymore because this is driving me insane. And also, I never look at it. So, like, you got to figure out what works for you. And like she said, multitasking isn't a thing. That doesn't mean like I will do tasks and have Gilmore Girls playing in the background because I've seen it 1,000 times. So it doesn't take any of my brain away from my task. It's just noise in the background because I've figured out I kind of need that.
Yeah.
I'll have, music, but I also won't have like a podcast because a podcast I'll want to listen to and like get the information. But something that I don't need to pay attention to, I can have that playing in the background. So that kind of it's not multitasking at that point. It's just background noise. But yeah, figuring out what works for you and how to use your time the most efficiently to get done what you want to get done. Also, don't let anybody tell you what that should be because all of our goals are different. All of our days look different. Yeah, I have the same 24 hours as Beyonce, but you know what? She has nannies. and she has a fitness instructor and she has millions and billions of dollars. Probably not billions. I don't know. But like it's a little different. Yeah, we do have the same 24 hours, but like there are things that you can figure out like what works for you. And so don't be like, well, what's Beyonce's daily schedule and try to replicate that because it's not going to work unless you're Beyonce. If she's
Unless
listening,
you're Beyonce, which
Beyonce.
there's only one. Hey, what's up, Beyonce? We love you. Um, so, and I wanted to touch on the thing of how to boost your efficiency. Absolutely write it down. And for those of you that struggle with insomnia, like myself, sometimes I can't sleep because my head is busy. So I actually keep my planner next to my bed and I'll write down what needs to be done. Especially if I'm like, oh fuck, I've got to fill out this tax form before Thursday, that needs to be written down. Or if you have like, oh, I need to fill out my tax form mid-November, you can write it closer to November. That's kind of the nice part of how having a calendar. And just like Heather said, you don't have to write it in priority because that's taking extra brain power. Write down what you have to do, and then you can put like a 1 or a 2 or a star. And when things come up that are taking your time away, you can write it down and decide what you need to do. But the best advice I got from one of my coaches, which is Janine Bolin, she said, when you're overwhelmed, because just like Heather described, I was doing a patent, I was doing a podcast, I was doing shows, I was doing website, I was building product, I was inventing product, I was doing all this at the same time, literally on the same day. And I didn't know where to start. Janine said, start with what makes you money. Start with what will give you cash in hand. So if that's building product to sell to somebody, because you have a show tomorrow, do that first. If you can't decide what you need to do, always go with what makes you money. The second part of that is do what's most difficult and most time consuming first. And a lot of times those tend to be the same thing. And then from there, you can figure out what doesn't need to be done right away. Anything that does not require a timeline, like filling out a tax form or something that get you in trouble or cost you money, you can, push those other things back a little bit. But also knowing, you know what, spending time with my kids is really important. I told them I go to their play on Friday. So guess what? While you're waiting on your plane on Tuesday afternoon, you're going to start writing your book. You're going to start working on your podcast. You're going to fulfill orders, at least digitally, until you can get back to your office. You're going to do everything you can to get that dead time that you've quote unquote lost and get those things done as much as possible. And planning saves you so much time. I've tried doing, if we're going to use author terms, I've tried pansting my schedule, just kind of going as it was naturally. Fuck my life. Nothing was in order and nothing was going the right direction. And I forgot things and things got behind schedule. Now that I have just a loose structure, and I mean, like I said, some of us plan months ahead. Raquel with R&B Pins, she just texted me saying, "Hey, we're sharing a hotel room for Philadelphia." I'm like, "Philadelphia's not for 9 months." Like she's already working on it. She's already got that shit like started. And I'm like, that's right. I should probably do that. She puts me to shame sometimes with my OCD. Like she's not OCD, but she plans like so far. She's like James Cameron in his planning, like planning Titanic 53, like for 10 years from now. You know what I mean? And she's that kind of person. But plan as much as you can. If you want to do the pretty calendar like I do it. It's fun and it's visual. I love visual aids like that because then I'll remember it. But by writing it down, I don't have to fucking remember it. I just have to know what's going on this week. So, Heather, any
Exactly.
last minute tips for time management?
Finding a system that works for you and it's going to take a lot of trial and error. As I can attest
Yeah.
for my entire adult life, I've tried different systems and I don't think I'm perfectly where I need to be either, but also giving yourself grace. Like you're not going to figure out right away. Everybody works different. Don't compare yourself to either of us. Please don't, because yikes. Uh, we're not doing so great. I mean, we do the best that we can, though. Give yourself a lot of grace. Don't
Yeah.
compare yourself. Find a system that works for you, something that's going to work long term. It's like anything in your life, something that you know, okay, this actually works for me. I don't dread doing this every day to make sure that my everything is on time. So, yeah, it's going to be different for everybody.
You can do it. We believe in you. But we hope you got some great tips out of this episode on time management. I'm sure we'll have to do another episode because there's so much we couldn't include in here. But
Because we
hopefully this will get
forgot
you
to manage our
started.
time.
And a special thank you to Nerdy Girl Podcast for producing this episode. We'll see you next time.